Paul, John Paul, what's his name? J. Paul, one of the bridges.
Big in the game.
I know I've been gone a long time. I'm back, and I want what is mine. No, I'm not on about your dad. I'm talking about J. Paul. Not him. And the lyric I just mentioned is the refrain to BTSTU, the world's first ever introduction to J. Paul. And it's pretty crazy that that lyric has much more weight behind it after the Coachella performance than it did even when it initially came out. So today I really just want to have a ramble about why I'm so excited at the prospect of potentially having new music from J. Paul. He's already announced new live shows, so maybe something new is on the way, we can only hope. If you know the lore per se, or already a fan of J. Paul, feel free to skip ahead, I'll put a little timestamp. But there's some pretty pivotal lore to understand this artist, and I'm going to take you all through it. So J. Paul is a singer, songwriter and producer who blew up in the early 2010s on MySpace due to his mysterious persona, but primarily his really unique and forward-thinking production, which, trust me, I'm going to detail a lot more later on. He released 2 tracks, the aforementioned BTSTU and Jasmine, and with just these 2 tracks, Jay managed to influence the mainstream and underground of music in the 2010s. He got sampled by Drake and Beyonce, Ed Sheeran did a cover of Jasmine, and he directly influenced so many artists like Flume, Murrow Massa, James Blake, Brockhampton, FKA Twigs, Frank Ocean, so many more. So at this point, everything was really looking up for Jay. People were already trying to bite his sound, and people absolutely loved him and his music off of just 2 singles. That was until April 2013. Unfortunately, due to the massive amount of hype, his album was leaked in 2013. A lot of fans were really excited to hear more tracks from Jay. Jay really did not share this excitement. For me, it was very difficult to deal with. As things unfolded, I went through a number of phases, but the immediate overriding feeling was one of complete shock. I felt numb. I couldn't take it all in at first. I felt pretty alone with everything. Like no one else seemed to view the situation in the same way I did. As a catastrophe. There was a lot going through my mind, but the hardest thing to grasp was that I'd been denied the opportunity to finish my work and share it in its best possible form. And you really can't help but sympathise with Jay in this position. You know, similarly myself, I was pretty traumatised when my goth girl DMs were leaked. For although, while it's in a much smaller magnitude in terms of the scope, ambition and reach, I can only imagine just spending so much time on a video, putting my heart and soul into it, and then have some raw, unedited version be leaked onto the internet, and the magic is lost because everyone's seen the skeleton of your work, and there was so much more you evidently wanted to change, and it would just be embarrassing, and it would demotivate you. Because of this, Jay stopped making music for years, went through years of therapy to try and get over what had happened, and be able to make peace with it. And I think in 2019, Jay did manage to do that by reclaiming his work with the official release of his 2013 leak. And this album evidently is not finished. It's rough. There are a significant amount of tracks which are almost like interludes, which were clearly just ideas. But despite that fact, I actually find it to be a pretty fantastic listen. I think all of the ideas on show and the more fleshed out songs are absolutely fantastic. And I am going to speak about these tracks, but before I do that, I really need to get to the heart of why people were so excited and still are so excited for J. Paul's music. And it's the sound, mate. Jay's production style is very idiosyncratic, which makes it very difficult to talk about in detail. So I'm going to play you some clips so we're on the same sort of wavelength. This isn't going to paint the entire picture, but at least we'll be on the same page. Sounds have a tendency to either creep or just burst through. It draws your attention to that sound for a brief moment of clarity before being washed away by everything else. And I find this particularly impactful when it's used on vocals in Jay's music, because they're normally just so buried. They're also further obscured by filters and effects. Like specifically, I think the way his vocals are treated on Jasmine really elevate how emotive the songwriting is. There's also these like cuts and glitches and stops which always make the next moment so punchy. All of the instruments are so futuristic, especially the synthesizers. They can emulate like laser beams and sci-fi sounds at points. Jay also does actually use sci-fi samples very frequently in these songs as well, which just fleshes out that element of the sound more. There's also a lot of really unique sampling as well, like the percussion sounds and the way he warps and mangles them is just absolutely insane. So just to be 100% sure, it's the sonic choices which is what enamored people initially with J. Paul's music. It sounded absolutely nothing like anything that was out at the time, and still manages to sound just so fresh 13 years later. But I also find Jay's music to just be really emotionally evocative as well. Like, it conjures up images of like an intergalactic bedroom guitarist. Anytime there's a significant moment, there's just a fucking ripple in space-time. Love songs from the core of the universe, that kind of thing. There are so many points of it being so understated, but then it can also feel simultaneously grand and cosmic. I remember being like 18 and first getting into J. Paul and just being breathless at some of the songs. Like Jasmine is such a heartfelt track and sounds so distinctive. And with that being said, I think the most underrated part of J. Paul's music is his songwriting itself, because the sounds are absolutely incredible, don't get me wrong, and you can't not have them, but underneath everything, the songs which are written and fleshed out are very well written songs. It also manages to cover a song which I find to be pretty bland otherwise, and make it just pretty incredible. The song Crush, initially by Jennifer Page, and I don't really care for that song, but J. Paul's version is fantastic, and he kind of elevates the songwriting with his production quite a lot. And with all that being said, I'm going to start talking about some tracks. So I like this one. This one's pretty good. This one's kind of mid. This one's shit. Straight Outta Mumbai, as the title suggests, is inspired by sounds of India, and it achieves this by sampling the Bollywood film Mirror, and it's where it gets this fantastic percussion sample which begins the track. All of it blends seamlessly with the choppy, unstable and electronic sensibilities of Jay's music. The instruments burst out with so much colour on this track, and that's what I mentioned before, and this is actually because of a creative use of a production technique called sidechain compression. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically where a compressor is triggered by the levels of other elements in the mix. So if another instrument gets a certain level, a compressor is triggered in another instrument. And this control over what is at the forefront means that whatever Jai wants you to hear, you will be focusing on in that moment, and it just creates these moments of immense clarity. Jay's falsetto is surrounded by these swirling synthesizers. They're reminiscent of like lasers, and then actual like sci-fi lasers like are used as samples in the background later on in the track. And as it progresses, there are so many just like little samples and cuts and jolts which just make it so exciting continually. And it really can't be understated how unbelievably catchy this song is. And at the end of the track, this other sample from Mirror plays, and it's this absolutely mind-blowing sung Hindu prayer. It is one of the most inspired samples I've ever heard in music. It's such a immense climactic end to this absolute banger. In J. Paul's world, these Hindu prayers are like guitar solos to it, and the way he uses sound is so incredible. Now, I'm only doing this once, but I think this writer really sums it up well. So, Pitchfork writer... Don't click off, please! Pitchfork writer Ryan Domble says that Straight Outta Mumbai is a miracle of cultural synthesis in which a young British man of Indian descent gloriously expands what pop music can be. And when reading and watching a lot of reviews, I think that was like my favourite line from any of them, and I just really wanted to showcase it here because I think it sums up the track so well. But if I ever quote a Pitchfork review in my videos ever again, some more of my DMs need to be leaked. "100,000 is another one of the songs that seems to build on the mystifying persona that Jay built up in BTSDU. The idea that Jay is this like futuristic being. On this track he sings about spending 100,000 light years on this. But light years is a measurement of distance, you fucking prick. He sings about being 100 light years ahead and away. And that's better. Now it seems to be that people interpret these lyrics in the context of a relationship, and that does make sense because that's what a lot of the song topics on this album delve in, but I can't help but feel like this is a meditation on Jay's musical style itself and him addressing some of the people who immediately tried to copy his style. The idea of being light years ahead of people. And then you have the line, "Tell me where you got this from." Why? Because it's mine and I've missed it so long. It's another reference in this track where he's talking about like missing something, as if there's been like a big span of time between something. And you know, it's kind of sus how much of these lyrics kind of seem to be more impactful post-leak, eh? And with that being said, it is actually a conspiracy by J. Paul fans that he did leak his own project. He's doing this like big meta performance art thing. I don't believe it. But it is fun to think about, and when you see things like this which were written pre-leak, I don't know. This track also does remind me of BTSTU with its like abrasive synth bass. It's also juxtaposed against Jay's soft falsetto. Love how all of the sounds and the ad-libs like intersperse between the lyrics, and it sounds like a fucking spaceship rocketing off through the atmosphere. I love this track. The futurism on here and several others is really captivating aspect of Jay's music. Genevieve is an awesome song, and lyrically it kind of details Jay, who's chasing after this woman who he once was with, but now he's kind of the second choice for. It's essentially the incel ideology into a banger. But despite that, I think this is like one of the moments on the album where Jay shows like a lot of confidence in his vocal delivery, a real stride and swagger to his performance here. And that contrasts really well from the vulnerability that is in a lot of the vocal performances. Like there are moments where he decides to like really pronounce like the ends of his lines with his London accent. It just really complements like the tone of his lyrics that he's going for. Because this is another track where he's kind of dealing with some kind of unrequited feelings, but he's much more assertive and confident in his delivery here. He's kind of believing in himself a bit more, and I really like that change. There's even like a little cheeky little laugh in there. He's so laissez-faire about the subject matter on this, and it's just a great angle where there are several other tracks which deal with a similar topic. I mean, it's just another straight up bop as well. It's so catchy. This man really has a knack for writing songs based on the name of one girl. I love the fantastic groove in the instrumental and the amount of life that the percussion and the synths have. The song ends with this fade out, but then it just fakes the fade out and just bursts back in. There are more pleas from Jay over this fracturing synthesizer melody, and then just some super groovy obscured guitar licks in the background, and I didn't even hear these for like years listening to this. I only heard them for the first time listening to this album for this video. It's just another fantastic example of like the left turns and just the fantastic sounds that are in Jay's music, and why I'm so excited for the prospect of more. Jasmine is a moment of real romantic vulnerability. Similar to Genevieve, it revolves around Jay trying to kind of win back this lady, Jasmine. He's asking her to complete him, to make his dreams come true. This track, in contrast, is pretty desperate and much more moody. He's putting this person on a pedestal whilst minimizing himself as he deals with the feelings of unworthiness in the face of this unrequited love. When I see her, Jasmine, what's a boy to do? Please come back to me, make my dream come true. When it comes to heartbreak, I don't want to feel this way. Just come back to me, baby, make my dreams come true. Can I meet you Friday, Saturday, if it's your day? I must be a real creep, because I think it's all for me. Jay sings this track in like a really timid falsetto, which is pretty obscured by the rest of the instrumental. I think the way his vocals are treated on this track really helped to convey the timidness and inferiority which comes across in the lyrics. It begins with like a deep pulsating bass with these heavily filtered guitar chords which sit on top of this weird airy sample which just sounds like gusts of wind. Guitar licks on this track sound like nothing I ever heard. It sounds like a wah pedal has like travelled through time and just submerged itself in the guitar. As indicated by the vocal intensity, Jay's vocals heighten towards the end of the track. Bright stabs of these filtered lead guitar enter. They cut through almost like a harsh reality check, like, what are you doing? this is pathetic, just stop, you're not getting anywhere. This track is incredible. It's genuinely one of the best songs I've ever heard. There's such a distinct melancholy and a really captivating story. The climax of this track, when he's singing, when it comes to heartbreak, I don't want to feel this way, there's just so much distress in his voice. It's like trying to cut through everything, but these like rising synths are just washing over his vocals. He can't get through to this person, his pleas are just meaningless. All of this distress just comes to such a gentle and warm close. The mood and the sound of this track is just absolutely one of a kind. The passion for the actual person he's singing about, but also how his feelings come across in this track is just so meticulous and just so clear how much care he takes with everything that goes on in his music. Just an absolutely outstanding, amazing track. So, back where we began. Much like J. Paul, it seems. I know I've been gone a long time. I'm back, and I want what is mine. I hope so, Jay. Don't fucking let me down again. BTSTU, or Back to Save the Universe, is Jay's first official release. The track which initially made everyone realise how talented J. Paul was. I've struggled throughout this video to properly convey the feelings and imagery which is conjured by J. Paul's music, and I'm gonna continue to do so because this track is just so sonically overwhelming, and it enters so hauntingly, so quietly, with these just creepy but beautiful falsetto harmonies. That was creepy and beautiful. Just gently singing Don't Fuck With Me. This very minimal beat enters and just eases you into the chorus, where this rupturing synth bass appears and just makes the entire track pulsate and just breathes life into everything. Jay opts for a falsetto in the verses, but then on the chorus he switches to a much more direct delivery, and I feel like this choice just really makes his delivery stern and makes you listen to what he has to say, and what he has to say is the refrain I've repeated several times throughout this video. This song becomes slowly overwhelmed by these cutting synthesizers, rushes of these weird futuristic samples, just a really intense but quick build up. There's this incredible filtered saxophone at the end which just adds this level of grandiosity to the finish of this track. Everything about BTSTU, from the lyrics to how it feels to just the sounds used to its context now 13 years later, just makes it feel like it was the entrance and exit for some sort of alien maestro. Given the recent Coachella performance and the fact that we're now getting some more live performances, let's hope it was the entrance of one. And yeah, I'm pretty much done now, but that's J. Paul, and that's just a couple tracks. I mean, he really is a unique and one-of-a-kind artist, and his music is just so easy to get lost in. Ever since I started listening to him in like 2018, I've really wished to hear more from him. With very little official material, he made everyone realise how much of a unique talent he is, and I think he's going to continue to have that reputation, but we can always hope for more, and I think, you know, now more than ever is the likelihood of that happening. And regardless of whether people believe the official release of the 2013 leak is more of a what if in terms of quality, I have to completely disagree. I think there are obviously clearly underdeveloped moments, but I think the ideas which are present and the more fleshed out songs make it a really fantastic listen. And by officially releasing this and essentially wearing the imperfections on his sleeve, I think this album forms its own unique identity as this kind of weird, unstable, unpredictable, messy part of greatness. It's such a weird way to fucking describe it, but there's just so many just unpredictable and just inspired moments. I find it difficult to just write it off because this wasn't initially what we were going to get. I think you really can't overstate Jay's creativity, and I think he's a fantastic artist. He's one of my favourites, and he's put fuck all out, and that's crazy. Thank you very much for watching. This video has made me want to fucking kill myself to make, so I've had to re-record it about 5 times. But I hope at least one of you just checks out a J. Paul track. I'd recommend either Jasmine or Straight Outta Mumbai, because those two are just absolutely insane. So thank you everyone for watching. Take care. I know I've been